Hey everybody, we're going to talk about Maslow's needs and the 7 L's of quality of life and take a look at whether or not we've got everything covered. Oops. So here we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it is basically, this particular chart is divided into basic needs, psychological needs, and self-fulfillment needs. I don't really like it divided that way. Basically, I look at these as physical needs. These are social needs. Some in between these two is emotional needs. Then we have mental needs, is not really, somewhere between, feeling of accomplishment and actually like prestige and stuff like that. Somewhere in here, we've got mental needs. And then the self-fulfillment needs is a little, what does self-fulfillment needs mean? So, in terms of this stuff, it's like, what we like to divide that into is community needs, which is a little different than belongingness, although not disconnected from it. In fact, it's probably better than it being down here. Like, there's having friends, and then there's having a community. So it's like a bigger level of that, like a larger community belonging to a culture or an area or something. It's like there are bigger circles of social needs. So community needs. And then motivational needs. Motivational needs. And we have another one up here, which probably would be there if this Maslow's hierarchy had all the details on it, but we have temporal needs. And we'll talk about that in a second. So, somewhere here at the peak of the pinnacle, and then, there's larger and larger, how do you put it? Whatever. Words. Too old for words. Okay. There's a kind of dogmatic, little bit ableist, or maybe a lot ableist idea that if you don't get all of these needs down here met, you cannot really get the ones above them met. So you'll hear how people will clamor for kids in school to get food, to get breakfast, because then they can't learn. Yes, they can't learn as well, but to say, or it's certainly a distraction from learning, to say they cannot learn unless they eat, like, it's compassionate, and it is wonderful, and it is humane to give them food. But it is also ableist to say that without food you do not learn, if that makes sense. It's like, no, you still learn when you don't have food. You may not learn the same things or as well. You certainly are learning under duress, and it takes more spoons. But to say you do not learn unless you eat is ableist and inaccurate. If that's what it takes for them to send money for kids to eat in school, okay, but like, how about do it because it's the right thing to do? Not to make them learn, but because there is a kid hungry. That's a good enough reason to feed a kid. It has nothing to do with whether or not they're going to learn. Just feed the kid. The kid's hungry. Feed the kid. How about that? Sorry. So, back to the 7 L's. So the 7 L's are about quality of life, where this is about needs. We're talking more about the fulfilling of the needs rather than like what the needs are so much. So it's more about, like, rather than saying you need love, I'm trying to say when you have love, you have a better quality of life. You know, it's hand in hand. When your needs are met, you have a better quality of life. They're hand in hand. But I don't want to talk about the deficit so much as the how to fill the hole, if that makes sense. So here it's saying you have this need, you have the hole. And I'm saying, well, here's the shuffle. Here's the shuffle, and here's the bucket full of stuff. Now let's fill the hole. It is very close to each other. So I'm kind of nitpicking, but I want to flip these to what to do, the verbs, rather than these kind of statements. So to get these needs filled, your physical ones, you're going to live. Whoops, I can't even spell. Let us spell. Get my pen back. So we will live. We're going to do it. To live. To live is to eat, to drink, to have warmth, to get rest, to have security and safety. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me. So I'm going to live. I'm going to fulfill those needs. Obviously, it may be difficult for me to do under certain circumstances, but once I get the living thing down, then I'm going to go on to love. Okay, I'll leave the 2 out. So that is our social needs. That is our physical needs. We are going to laugh, liberate, to live, love, laugh, right? Laugh is somewhere in here. That is a level of emotional need. Got to let some of the steam out, right? Then we've got this mental need to learn. And then live, love, laugh, learn. Then we have liberate. Only going down to get underneath the words. And then we have lead. And then temporal, legacy. Oops. See, making a mess since 1969. Liberate. No. Did it again. I'll get it right eventually. Legacy. Okay. So, to fill the hole, to fill the need, we will live, love, laugh, learn, liberate, lead, and leave a legacy. Now, we won't always do these in exactly this order, but it is easiest, if we fill the bottom of the trough, if you will, bottom of the needs bucket, and we work on each in order. That will be easier, but not necessary, especially once you start getting towards the top. You can skip levels. If you don't want to laugh, that's up to you. But there are ways of laughing that are healthy. And what would we do without Justin making us laugh all the time here? Is there anything else? We had more. We had to redo this. So basically these do map somewhat to Maslow's hierarchy. There are a lot of diagrams for this. This one's kind of bare bones, but I wanted something that might be able to be seen on the screen, where some of them are very cluttered and have lots and lots of information in them on all the needs in every layer. Everything they could think of is crammed into each of these layers, and it would have been really cluttered to try and write on that. So I chose one that was a little more sparse and gave some bare bones information. So you can look up Maslow if you really want to, and if you have questions about anything you see out there and how it maps back to this, you can ask. But what I like is that this is kind of our own idea, the 7 L's. So we like that it maps neatly to, or fairly neatly, to Maslow's hierarchy. So it's not like all out there, if you will. Of these, I will attribute. So, the poem Success is by, what was her name again? Bessie Anderson Stanley in 1904. And she identified live, laugh, and love. And Stephen Covey talked about learning and leaving a legacy. Actually, let me do that again. Stephen Covey had 4, which were to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy. When we did our coaching website, we had, when we were growing up, we had a live, love, laugh pendant given to us, and we really latched onto that. So we already knew those 3 from having that pendant. And we figured out the liberate and lead was after we had our vision that inspired the book Surrender to Passion. We added liberate and lead to that and stuck it on our coaching materials, like our business card and everything. Like it was like our mantra or subtitle for the website. So it was live, love, laugh, liberate, lead. So we brought the other 2 in from Covey, really. And we said, wow, that really seems like something complete. It really seems like we're onto something here. So liberating helps your community be free. And now we have some more information on that. It enables you to be surrounded by good, likable people. When people have all of these other needs, okay, when these needs are not met, your community is not free to be its best for you or for itself. So this is where you're giving back. If you've been homeless before, you know that people need shelter. So you might be helping to work in the community on liberating people who are homeless and helping them find shelter, if that makes any sense. If there's anything in here that's like, this is where we're going to talk about, or we already talked about, what's the order this is in? By the time you get to this, I think you will already, yes. That's the last one that we did just before this. So this is where your sacred cause usually will be. Or the thing that breaks your heart. Will usually be one of these liberate things. It helps your community to be free. And that's where you're giving back. Is right there in liberate. And sometimes that becomes, whatever it is you're doing, may actually become a motivation. It may become something that you end up becoming a leader in. So you may eventually end up being a leader in that movement, or taking on a smaller lead role locally in that movement. A chapter, a small study group, or a small action group, or writing a letter, whatever little bit or big part of leadership, something that you take initiative. That's it. You see something that needs to be changed, and you institute the change. You go out of your way to do something to make that change. And there you go. That's it. You know, it's like you're paying it forward and helping others, and then you're taking initiative. So you can be part of a group already taking care of that need, and then there may be side projects or whatever that you see that somebody needs to take initiative on, and you may choose and step up and volunteer, or you may decide something nobody is even thinking of needs to be done and start doing it. And there we go. So, hopefully after all of this mess, you understand what I'm talking about. We are just talking about this for the very first time with you. So, congratulations. You're on the bleeding edge of Chris's trailblazing things. Trailblazing. I feel like I've got a bunch of vines in front of me and I'm holding a machete. Sometimes getting through my own brain is like, there's a lot of vines in front of me and I'm holding a machete. Yeah, and just we're going to make a funny, because it kind of is a funny. So we were thinking about how difficult it is to find words and verbs, and especially nouns, now that we're over the age of 50. You know, it's getting increasingly more difficult sometimes. And we figured out why. It's because there's so much stuff in our head that we've had to make zip files out of stuff. So we have to wait for the file to like unzip in order for us to get to those words, because we packed them away to make room. Anyway, so enjoy this video.